Previously on Patrick H. Willems.
This is Charles, my new friend. A quarantined talk show. Have you talked to Matt lately?
The coconut?
They set up an address for him a while back.
Tear down our fake New York backdrop and return to the real thing. Matt, hey, I'm back.
No. Another ghost.
Matt, I'm not a ghost. I'm Patrick.
Shush, foul spirit! You come to demand more Matt Wines. Well, we know what to do about that.
Matt, it's me.
I don't know. An advanced ghost. That's the one. Welcome home, real Pat. Man, I was lonely.
Hey, thanks so much for holding things down while I was away.
I appreciate it. It was nothing, man. Honestly,
I wasn't talking to you. Charles, my best buddy. Okay, now you have got to tell me everything that's been happening. I mean, you have so many stories. That is a really interesting point, Charles. Hey, Matt. Charles was just making this really interesting point. Thanks to this goddamn fucking pandemic, we're reaching the end of the first summer pretty much ever with no blockbuster movies. All those franchise installments we were obligated to check in on, Black Widow, Wonder Woman, F9, that Ghostbusters movie set in the Midwest, have been postponed. And if you're in a country that's allowed to see Tenet, please politely shut your mouth. I feel like this is a point of reflection. Now that we have a break from the blockbuster cycle and the endless franchise hype machine, it's worth asking ourselves, what do we want from these movies?
Oh yeah, I've been doing great these past 5 months. Thank you so much for asking.
Let me tell you what I would like to see. I want more blockbusters to take a cue from a small class of recent movies. A group of big, weird, colorful pieces of spectacle cinema that, for their many flaws, contain an exuberance and unrestrained imagination that we almost never see anymore. This is what I call the modern class of Gonzo Blockbusters.
Wait, what do you mean by Gonzo? Are you talking about this guy?
Matt, we already addressed this in a video 2 years ago. Therefore, science proves that every movie would be improved by the addition of Gonzo.
I don't remember that at all.
But we're not talking about Gonzo, we're talking about Gonzo. For lack of a better word, I mean crazy. These are movies that are filled to the brim with a relentless imagination. Movies that are not afraid to be silly or weird or corny. Movies that want to show us as many spectacular new worlds and sights and characters as they can fit into a 2-hour running time. These tend to be the wild passion projects of directors who have recently had a major success and leveraged that to get a studio to give them a massive budget for a weird, risky movie. And they are determined to use every last cent of that budget to show us the wildest fucking shit we've ever seen. These are movies like Jupiter Ascending, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, Alita Battle Angel, Aquaman, and Mortal Engines. Quick unfortunate side note, Luc Besson, director of Valerian, has been accused of sexual assault by multiple women. Sorry to kill the mood, but it's something that should be mentioned. Back to the video. It seems weird to be defending these hugely expensive movies as if they're little underdog indie movies, but the fact is, most of these were huge commercial flops. Audiences didn't see them and they lost the studios a bunch of money. So yeah, I'm gonna defend them. And before you point out that Aquaman was a big hit, I know, but it's kind of the exception that proves the rule. But let's back up and ask ourselves an important question. What's the point of blockbusters anyway?
Pat, can you please just deliver your monologue or whatever to the coconut?
Matt, that doesn't make any sense. He helped write it. Anyway, the point of blockbusters. These are big-budget, escapist entertainment designed to appeal to the widest possible audience. And over the past 25 years, the way to appeal to that audience has been to deliver what they already know. Reboots and sequels, and movies that are essentially safe bets. This is not a criticism, but a large part of the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is its ability to deliver an experience that feels fun and satisfying in a similar way every time. But let's jump back to the dawn of the blockbuster era, the mid to late 70s, when Georgie Porgy and Lil Steve appeared on the scene and changed the modern film landscape. Many books have been written about why their movies were so successful, and I think much of it has to do with the fact that they're just great fucking movies. But the initial hook that drew people to the theaters was that they promised to show audiences things they had never seen before. So in this era, Jaws had a giant shark, Superman had a flying man, Close Encounters had spaceships, Blade Runner had flying cars in a futuristic Los Angeles, Aliens had aliens, Terminator 2 had a morphing liquid metal man, and Jurassic Park had dinosaurs. And this was really just an updated version of what filmmakers like Georges Méliès had been doing since the beginning of cinema, using the tools available to create spectacular images the audience had never seen before. We're all so familiar with the universe of Star Wars at this point that it's easy to forget what an unpredictable gonzo imagination those original movies had. What blew people's minds was that opening shot of the Star Destroyer flying over the camera, and a sword made of lasers, and a World War II-style aerial battle on the surface of a space station as big as a moon, and a bar filled with dozens of crazy-looking aliens. They just kept throwing insane shit at us. Giant four-legged mechanical vehicles that shoot lasers, a huge space worm living in an asteroid, a city in the clouds, Yoda. These were movies designed to elicit awe and wonder by showing us impossible things. But in the past 25 years, wonder and awe faded as studios realized how lucrative familiarity and nostalgia can be. And I think part of this is because of the evolution of visual effects. For all the movies that I just mentioned, a major part of their appeal was their groundbreaking visual effects that allowed the impossible to exist on screen. Through the 80s and 90s, visual effects technology was constantly taking massive leaps forward. It seemed like every year a new breakthrough had been made, and it would show up on movie screens and blow our minds. These days, there are more movies with more visual effects than ever, and the effects are better than they've ever been. But how often do we have that feeling of wonder that we got from Jurassic Park? Like, last year, there was a movie where Spider-Man and a flying man with a fishbowl for a head fought a giant creature made of water in the middle of Venice, and the effects looked great. And I watched it and went, that was okay. Dennis Muren, who has won 8 Oscars for visual effects on everything from E.T. to Jurassic Park, said this: "I think we sort of have reached a ceiling in some ways. I think special effects aren't special anymore. This toolkit has been around for 20-25 years. For the past decade, we've been in a post-Avatar world. When movies regularly deliver whole sequences where everything we're seeing on screen is created in a computer, and it's all spectacular, and it all looks real, what can impress us anymore? To paraphrase cinema's most beloved character, Syndrome, when everything is special, nothing is." So now, movies need to find new ways to create that feeling of wonder. And I think that these Gonzo blockbusters do it. Yes, they use the most cutting-edge visual effects technology, but the other essential ingredient is imagination. James Cameron's Avatar, for a decade the highest-grossing film of all time, spent years developing the most cutting-edge visual effects technology, so as to bring to life a whole alien world with its own ecosystem and race of people and culture. But these Gonzo blockbusters, they look at that, shrug, and say, what if we did that 5 times in one movie? They're using the same visual effects toolkit as every other blockbuster, but they've managed to recapture that sense of wonder because of the images that toolkit is being used to create. They're like the Star Wars cantina scene expanded to entire feature films. There's a breathless energy to them, like they can't wait to show us every part of this crazy world they've created. The opening sequence of Valerian shows the evolution of Earth's intergalactic diplomacy over 150 years, at one point introducing 6 wildly different alien races in under a minute. From there, it jumps ahead 400 years into the future, and introduces a new alien world with its own species and culture and aesthetics. And then it introduces the film's protagonists, who are on a mission to a market that exists in 2 overlapping dimensions simultaneously. And that is before we even get to the titular city of 1,000 planets. There is a lot happening in this movie. Pause on any frame and you'll see a background littered with different aliens. The detail just goes on and on forever. In this one shot, Valerian crashes through 5 floors, each one with its own aesthetic. Later on, there's a chase scene with this shot that keeps going and revealing new aspects to the world every few seconds. In Aquaman, we're introduced not just to Atlantis, but to 4 other undersea kingdoms as well. Just when we think we've seen it all, the story reaches a land at the center of the Earth where dinosaurs live. Then in the next scene, it gives us a kaiju-sized sea monster voiced by Julie Andrews, and then in the next scene, a battle with giant lava crabs. Now compare this to Captain Marvel, one of the biggest films of 2019. The story begins on the Kree homeworld of Hala, which mostly consists of a couple shots of a generic futuristic skyline and some big empty rooms. Then the characters go on a mission to a planet that's just like a lot of fog and some rocks. What is this? Did they just forget to design anything for this planet? This is the case with a lot of modern sci-fi blockbusters. In another 2019 movie, Men in Black International, there's a scene set in an alien nightclub. Cool idea, right? Well, turns out everyone there just looks like a human, except for this guy. Literally one alien in an alien nightclub. What a waste. Why make one of these movies if you don't want to build a whole new world? Okay, one sec. So here's what Lily Wachowski, co-director of Jupiter Ascending, said about this a few years back. She said, "It's the difference between Jupiter and some other science fiction films where it's just like you see a whole city made out of the exact same material, the exact same architecture. I don't think people are interested in filling in all of those details because it's not easy. They tend to lean on this sort of shorthand, like design has become, it's all a case of quoting other things, like they do in dialogue. They aren't even shortcuts, it's just repeating. Spaceships look like this. It's boring." Say what you will about Jupiter Ascending, but it refuses to be lazy or boring with any of its design choices. There are ornate luxury spaceships and alien palaces and a factory in Jupiter's Great Red Spot. Every minor character has a totally different look. There are dragon men and an elephant guy, and Gugu Mbatha Raw is apparently part mouse. And this philosophy of designing worlds applies to all of the filmmakers behind these movies. Mortal Engines introduces us to traction cities, which are entire cities on wheels, and it shows how their engines work, how they consume other cities, how they dispose of waste. We see the customs checkpoint, food stands serving algae, how London's underground has become a sort of Ferris wheel moving up and down through the city. The world is overflowing with detail, and it's the depth of that detail that makes it feel like a real place. So look at Atlantis and Aquaman, and then back at Hala and Captain Marvel, and it's like, how did these 2 movies cost the same? Because they did. A general rule with Hollywood's approach to genre stories is to tone down the weird or crazy stuff out of a fear that audiences will reject it. So when they were adapting X-Men, they dropped the colorful costumes and stories about time travel or aliens to focus on grounded science fiction in black leather jumpsuits. And even in the past decade, as that loosened with the rise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the crazier concepts are always delivered via some winking, eye-rolling cynicism. A snarky white dude will be there to make fun of the costumes or the walking tree or the way Thor talks. And don't get me wrong, it's a smart, successful way to handle it. The audience is more willing to buy into this stuff if the movie shows that it knows how nuts it is. But part of what's refreshing about the Gonzo Blockbusters is how they refuse to do that. There's no winking, no eye rolling, no one going, okay. All the characters believe in this world and take all the bug nuts insanity at face value. These are sincere, open-hearted movies, and by open-hearted, I mean in Alita Battle Angel, the title character literally opens up her chest and hands her heart to someone. So I went through all these movies and counted what I consider Bonkers Moments. These are anything where my eyes bug out and I want to pause the movie and go, tell me everything about this. So I'm talking about like the Moon War flashback in Alita, or the zero gravity orgy in Jupiter Ascending, or Cara Delevingne putting a psychic jellyfish over her head, or an octopus playing drums. These movies are full of bizarre characters who only appear for a single scene, like Intergalactic Advocate Bob, or McTeague the Dogmaster, or the Brine King. According to my calculations, Valerian has one bonkers moment every 2.5 minutes. Aquaman is every 2.8 minutes, Alita is every 2.85, Jupiter Ascending every 3.4, Mortal Engines every 4.5, and A Wrinkle in Time every 7.1 minutes. That one is maybe the loosest fit into this group, but I'm gonna count it. None of these movies had to go that hard, but they did. While these movies are often based on Western comic books or manga or young adult novels,
Pat, get out! What the hell, man?
I think the biggest influence is the wave of fantasy and sci-fi films kicked off by the original Star Wars in 1977 that ran through the 80s. Rewatching all of these movies, I kept thinking of stuff like Labyrinth or The Neverending Story, where every scene would introduce some wonderfully bizarre sort of creature. There's a real Jim Henson vibe to a lot of these movies, even if most of the creatures are created digitally. But this kind of storytelling goes back much further. These movies are like modern takes on The Wizard of Oz or Alice in Wonderland. Fantastical stories with seemingly limitless imaginations.
Still get out of here, but also literally talk about anything else.
Sure. This is a video about filmmakers taking risks on ambitious passion projects that often have trouble at the box office. And sometimes us YouTube creators want to make our own ambitious passion projects that have trouble with the algorithm. So, I worked with a bunch of other creators, in my opinion some of the best people on YouTube, to find a solution and develop a platform that can allow us to make these ambitious passion projects. And you know what it's called? You probably already guessed it, it's Nebula. Nebula has all of our regular videos with no ads, so if you watch this video on Nebula, this ad read right here will not be in it. But the really cool thing is that so many of us are making original projects that are only available on Nebula. One of my favorites is Alex Goes Bananas, where Alex Nickel from the channel Technicality, who's an 18-year-old, learns about pop culture from the 90s and early 2000s from creators like Legal Eagle, Renee Ritchie, and 12 Tone. And yes, I'm biased because I'm in the first episode teaching Alex about Limp Bizkit. And as soon as it's safe to do real film productions again, I'm going to be shooting my own short film that will premiere on Nebula, and folks, it's gonna be crazy. Now obviously Nebula is cool, and the good people at CuriosityStream, the great platform dedicated to nonfiction and documentary programming, recognized that. So they teamed up with us to create a bundle. If you sign up for CuriosityStream at the link in the description, you get a Nebula subscription for free. That is 2 streaming services for the price of 1, and you're supporting creators like me, which allows us to make more of these ambitious passion projects. So just click the link, sign up, and help us make some more Gonzo videos. Matt, wake up. I'm not done yet.
Jesus! Pat, what are you doing? Why does the coconut get a chair?
Because people love Charles. I mean, have you seen his fan cam?
Oh my god, what is that?
And that's not all. Charles even has his own merch now. See? Charles enamel pins, available now at the link in the description.
Is there Matt merch?
No! What a silly idea. Anyway, this is the serious part of the monologue, so buckle up.
Get out of my room!
See, for all the wonderful things about these movies, they do have their problems, and those problems are almost always with the narratives. Simply put, these tend to work better as spectacle than as stories. Alita doesn't even manage to tell a complete story, cutting off abruptly at the end in the probably foolish belief that it will get a sequel. Jupiter Ascending feels like it was chopped down from a more coherent, longer movie. A lot of these movies are let down by main characters that aren't a fraction as interesting as the worlds they inhabit. The central love stories in Alita, Jupiter Ascending, and Valerian don't really work at all. Speaking of Valerian, that character is miscast to a truly disastrous degree. Dane DeHaan is an actor who always comes off as a smug asshole who looks like he has tuberculosis. This works great in a movie like A Cure for Wellness, and it works not at all in a movie where he's supposed to be a roguish, charming ladies' man. Also, Cara Delevingne is supposed to be his love interest, but looks like his sibling, and it's weird. Mortal Engines is populated almost entirely by a cast of interchangeable, boring, pretty white people, who are all totally overshadowed by the real hero of the movie, Shrike, the resurrected man, the last of the Lazarus Brigade. I don't really know what any of that means, but he's basically a walking metal zombie, and he is my new best friend. Whenever Shrike isn't on screen, I keep asking, where's Shrike? So here's the part where you say, excuse me, Patrick, I'm an intellectual, and all that truly matters in a film is the story. Cool, go read a book then. As I've said before, movies are not math. They're weird, complex organisms. There is no standard grading rubric to evaluate the level of success or failure in different categories and declare whether or not the movie as a whole objectively works. We all bring something different to the viewing experience, and we all have different priorities. Yes, obviously storytelling and characters are big priorities for me, but sometimes a movie has other qualities that matter just as much. The story in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers is a bunch of problematic nonsense, but man, those musical numbers are so good you don't really mind. No one watches Ong Bak looking for an emotionally resonant character arc. You watch it for the parts where Tony Jaa hits people in the face with his knee. To be clear, I'm not saying these movies all have garbage stories and that they're only worth watching for the visuals. I'm saying that depending on the level of imagination on display, I'm willing to forgive some other problems. And that's why I've created what I call the Gonzo scale. It's a very loose scatter plot with two axes. One evaluates a movie's imagination, the other its storytelling.
Didn't you say these aren't math? I mean, this looks like math to me. You're literally grading these movies in different categories.
Matt, shut up. I'm not using numerical scores here, and I'm not using this to declare overall quality. I'm just looking for a correlation. So if you look at this chart, I've plotted where all the movies land. Valerian is at the highest point on the scale, with the greatest imagination, but it only goes halfway up the storytelling axis. Aquaman is stronger in storytelling, but just below it in imagination. Down in the lower left quadrant, you have Gods of Egypt, with the weakest storytelling of the bunch, but enough imagination to make it onto the scale. Most of these form a group going top to bottom down the center of the scale, with varying degrees of huge imagination and storytelling that runs from weak to pretty good. So now the big question. What about this area up here? Does there have to be a trade-off between visual imagination and storytelling quality? Is it possible to fuse the two, to make a movie packed to the gills with wild new worlds and sights and designs that is also a powerful, exciting, emotional experience? Yes. It's called Mad Max Fury Road. Look, it has been 5 years since Fury Road was released, and in that time we've all agreed that it's one of the unimpeachable masterpieces of the 21st century. It still feels like a miracle, and that's because it manages to do what virtually no other movie has. Blend great storytelling with a totally insane imagination, and stand alone in the top right quadrant of the Gonzo scale. Fury Road has just as detailed a world as Jupiter Ascending or Mortal Engines. It introduces a whole culture with its own hierarchy and religion, a civilization with different factions led by characters like the People Eater and the Bullet Farmer. The basic story of the movie isn't that far off from Mortal Engines. They're both set in corrupt, toxic societies in a post-apocalyptic future. In each movie, an outsider teams up with someone from that society, they go on the run, find a peaceful community of people, then head back to take down the leader of that corrupt society. Now, I enjoy Mortal Engines, but the movie loses a ton of momentum anytime it shifts its focus from the amazing world building to the dull set of characters. I care a lot less about the budding romance between... shit, what are their names? Hester and Tom than I do about the way London eats other cities. Mad Max, on the other hand, manages to perfectly weave its imagination and storytelling together. There's no fat on it. The characters have crystal clear motivations and are as interesting to watch as the crazy world they inhabit. The mythology is all there to serve a very simple story. There is no exposition, no monologues where the characters explain their backstory and the history of the world. The design elements provide context clues so the audience can fill in the details themselves without the movie needing to slow down to explain things. The greatest strength of all these movies are the visuals. So Fury Road tells its story almost exclusively with visuals. It has all of the strengths of the other movies, but none of their weaknesses. Okay, maybe not all the strengths. It could use an octopus playing drums. I mean, pretty much every movie could. An octopus playing drums.
Is there Matt merch?
This is Charles. I think audiences are going to love him. Have you seen his fan cam? An octopus playing drums.
Is there Matt merch?
This is Charles. I think audiences are going to love him. Have you seen his fan cam? An octopus playing drums.
Is there Matt merch?
This is Charles. I think audiences are going to love him. Have you seen his fan cam? Look, I am obviously excited about plenty of blockbusters that don't fit into what I'm describing here. I'm dying to see F9 and James Gunn's The Suicide Squad and Chloe Zhao's Eternals movie, but I miss that feeling of awe and wonder and surprise that blockbuster movies used to regularly provide. And I think maybe you do too. So what I'm saying is, give movies like this a shot. I know they seem weird and unfamiliar and silly, and yeah, most of them have problems, but they've also got a whole lot of wild shit you've never seen before. And that's what I think we need more of. Those big swings from interesting filmmakers who have somehow convinced a major corporation to let them play with hundreds of millions of dollars. Let's support our traction cities and motorball champions and hoverboot-wearing dogmen and cities of 1,000 planets. More weird shit in blockbusters for 2021. Wait, Matt, what are you doing?
I can't take any more of this, man. I'm leaving.
Like you're going outside for a walk?
No, Pat. Look, I've been stuck in this apartment alone with that coconut for 5 months, and maybe it was the quarantine taking its toll on my mind, but I really started believing he was alive.
He is alive.
No, Pat, it's a goddamn coconut. This is the problem. I really thought when you came back that things would go back to normal. I would have a human to talk to. And look, I appreciate you clean the stove, you told me to take a shower every now and again, but I still feel like I'm this prop in a weird diluted game you're playing or something. I'm gonna have to go. Just call me when you get over this thing and do yourself a favor, throw that coconut in the garbage.
But who am I gonna deliver my monologues to?
I don't care.
But, Pat?
Yeah, Matt?
I know I said all that stuff just now, but do you think I could get one of those cool drone shots?
Sure, buddy. I'm gonna miss you.
Sick.
Charles, commence phase 2. Hello?
Yeah, delivery from the Francis Ford Coppola winery.
Hello everybody, thank you so much for watching. Now the Charles pin in the video was not a joke. People have been demanding it for months and we really do have Charles merchandise available right now at the merch store, link in the description. We also have Shut Up About Plot Holes stickers that you can stick on things, and some people ask about the striped shirts. You can get these anywhere, but you know what you can't get anywhere? Striped shirts. Shirts with pictures of striped shirts on them. You can only get those in our merch store. Link is down there. I'm pretty excited about them, and I'm finally back in New York in my apartment. We've got a big autumn of videos planned, so I'll see you soon.